Hello everybody, and we are back here with another video and another Marvel Disney Plus series, and this time we have the one that I was most excited for of all the shows that they announced, which was Loki. And I just watched the first episode at 1 a.m. in the morning my time, and my gosh, it was so incredibly good. I have a lot to talk about today, but I'm going to try to condense it as much as possible. So we're going to get right into these spoilers and recap and review of this episode. And if you see the channel name, it is the Unprofessional Reviewer, because I'm not a professional filmmaker or, Marvel comics reader or anything like that. So if you're looking for some in-depth comic Easter egg references thing, go to another video. But if you just want to hear somebody geek out, somebody who loves the MCU and somebody who just wants to talk about this with everybody here so early in the morning, then definitely stick around, because this is Tom Hiddleston's show and I absolutely adored him in this episode. He's the thing I want to talk about first, because his character has always been interesting for me in the entirety of the MCU, because he started off as, a straight up villain in the Thor movie and in Avengers, and he was one of the best villains to this point, even still, with, some villains like Vulture and of course Thanos, standing out amongst the crowd of a bunch of Marvel villains. But Loki has always been an interesting one, because not only was he a great villain in those early movies, but his character arc throughout the entire series was very impactful, and seeing this version of Loki straight out of the 2012 Avengers movie was very interesting to see, because this show picks up right after the events of Avengers Endgame and those moments where Loki reached down, grabbed the Tesseract, and zapped his way to wherever in the world he went to. I think it's some place in Mongolia, some desert in Mongolia, and he wakes up there, and the Time Variance Agency, or the TVA, whatever they're called, the TVA appears out of nowhere essentially and grabs him and snatches him back into their little world of just crazy, gorgeous visuals. And this entire episode was essentially introducing us into this really crazy world of, time working differently in this place, and this little animated cartoon explaining that there's, a main timeline, the sacred timeline that has everything that we've seen so far, and everything needs to follow this flow of time. And if something branches out and you have this, branch of time that reaches to a certain point, becomes a nexus event essentially, and it can break the timeline, it can break the multiverse, and all these different things, which that little animated cartoon had so much in it that was just like mind-blowing. And of all the shows that we've seen so far, WandaVision and Falcon Winter Soldier, that little 3-minute animated section has more impact on what I believe the future of the MCU, especially with Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, could possibly be. And of course, you had a Nexus mention in WandaVision as well, of her being a Nexus being, somebody who has the ability to break that timeline in such a way that could be catastrophic for the universe, essentially. And so it's building these blocks and these little pieces and just that little tiny moments of this episode that gets me really excited. But the main show of this, of course, is Tom Hiddleston getting introduced into all these worlds and, being shown his life essentially on this little screen by Owen Wilson. And it's a very interesting place, because it's like the TVA is so cool, because they have this technology to rewind people, or to, he's punched in the face at one point and his body is slowed down to slow speed, but everybody else is moving at a normal pace, and apparently he feels the pain of normal speed in that slow pace. So how wonderful is that in terms of a time travel little cool gimmick thing that of course they're going to use later in this show, and I cannot wait for them to use more of this rewind ability and all these different cool things that they can do with time, because of course you have a show about time travel and you can do all these crazy things with it, go nuts with it, and that's what it seems like they're already doing in this small office space. So he goes up to Gugu Mbatha-Raw, who is a fantastic actress, and she's essentially this judge who can tell the variants of, are they guilty of breaking the timeline, and essentially deleting this variant so the timeline can go back to normal, and so everything goes back to how it should be. But of course, Owen Wilson stops the process and brings him to this room where he starts showing Loki his life and starts showing events from the Avengers movies, from different things. A little flashback that apparently he is DB Cooper, and apparently it was like a bet from Thor or something like that. That was a very, very funny. There's a lot of funny moments scattered throughout this entire episode from the beginning to the end, and the comedy in this show worked so much better than some of the other shows. Like WandaVision started off very sitcom-y, and once it gets into the thick of things, the comedy worked better. But what really drew me into that show was really trippy and bizarre, and the great character arc that Wanda went through in that show. Falcon Winter Soldier had some humor in it, but I thought it felt out of place for the tone of the show. And that one, although I really, really enjoyed that show, I think that was my least favorite of what we've gotten so far. Although it had the best moments of any of the shows that we've gotten so far with Isaiah Bradley and all that stuff. And Loki Loki, the way that has started, shows that it could be very grand and consequential to the entirety of the MCU, which is really, really cool. It's following a really interesting character. But not only that, but it just seemed, this first episode seemed to introduce this world so perfectly. The humor fit so well. The tone of it was spot on. And Tom Hiddleston, the performances from Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston, and the actress Wunmi Mosaku. I really hope I'm saying your name right. I'm probably butchering it, but she is a phenomenal actress. She was in that one HBO show, Lovecraft Country, where she was great in that show, and she's now in this show, which is amazing to see her in this one. But the entire cast and the tone and the feel of this show really knocked it out of the park, and this is just one episode alone. And so we continue on. We get to see Loki watching his entire life play out, and he's starting to realize that the true illusion of Loki was not, the normal tricks that he would pull on his brother or on the bad things that he's done, but the true front of that was, hurting people, and the true front of it was being evil to try to gain power, that cowardly way to find power from somebody who is truly weak. And so when he has the Tesseract in this episode, and it's useless in the TVA, and he has realized that this grand power that he had sought for so long at this point, because this is a 2012 Loki here, that grand power that he had sought, that he had been journeying through after the first Avengers movie, which would be amazing to watch Avengers and then this episode right after it, knowing the context of what happens following it, but watching those back to back could be interesting to really see this version of Loki go through that character arc that he went through in several movies in a very short amount of time, and we're quite not sure where Loki is standing in that character arc, because he seems to have really been impacted by his mother's death once again, by Thor saying that maybe there is some good in you, or maybe all these inspirational things of seeing him fight side by side with his brother after all that time of them fighting against one another, and all these different things up until his actual death, of him watching Thanos snap his neck, and that power that he had all wither away. Watching his performance in this episode is really, really heartbreaking, because he just watched his life, what could be the potential of his life, and he's seeing the power in this world that he's now in, this true power of these three lizard people controlling the sacred timeline and all these different things, this power that is extremely intriguing to him. And so I don't quite trust this Loki yet. I think there's a long way to go for that, and I haven't even mentioned the main, conflict of this show is going to be this other variant character that apparently has been, killing their little time cops or whatever they're called, and has been wreaking havoc, that has been trying to trigger a Nexus event and going through timelines and doing whatever this character is doing. And we find out, and I actually predicted this earlier on, I was like, that'd be cool if this variant is also a different variant of Loki, because they say he is variant L1130 or something like that. And so I'm thinking, is he the 1130th variant of Loki? Because that is kind of insane that there's that many variants of Loki, if that's the reasoning behind the number. But you have this character, this Loki variant that has been wreaking havoc, and is that the same exact variant? Is that just the end of his arc in this show, or is it just a completely separate variant? Or is it that same moment where he grabbed the Tesseract and there was splintering timelines from that exact moment? There's so many opportunities for this Loki variant to be, twisted in terms of his own timeline. When did this Loki variant break out from his timeline? Why did it go so wrong? Is this a moment where Loki decided not to, confront Thanos in that, and so he actually survived that? Or is this a Loki a lot earlier that had gone through this whole variant thing before and had stayed more at that evil part and didn't get the character arc that he was able to get in this episode of seeing his future that he actually did have? So a lot of questions of who this actual variant Loki is. And of course Marvel's going to do this because they've done this in almost every first iteration of a superhero's or a anti-hero, in this case's origin stories, having the villain be an opposite version of themselves, like Wanda with, of course, the Agatha Harkness, and even in that show Vision and White Vision, the opposites of the same character fighting against each other. Of course, Iron Man fighting Ironmonger, Black Panther fighting Killmonger, all those different things. Now you have Loki fighting the only character that can truly be his opposite, which is another variation of Loki who is truly evil and who's trying to cause this crazy events in the timeline. So there's a lot of cool stuff that they could do in the future of this show, just in terms of this character arc and in terms of this basic conflict, but it's also setting the precedent to what could be the reasoning and the explanation behind everything that happens in, say, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. So a lot of explanation, laying the groundwork for them to really break into this different, crazier cosmic type of storytelling that they had pitched off when they first announced Phase 4. And I also want to talk about in this episode, which it is kind of a theme in any sort of time travel thing, is the idea between fate and choice. Because when you have those two different things, and I think the movie that does it the best, in my opinion, is Arrival, because it doesn't give a direct answer to that question. Arrival is brilliant because it has a character who is faced with, seeing her entire future of what it could be, and having the choice of possibly changing it, but she chooses to stay on that path. So it begs the question, did she have that choice in the first place? I wrote a 12-page paper about that conflict about that concept in film school, in one of my writing classes. And so that idea of fate and choice was, tapped into this episode, and they straight up say that the sacred timeline is the exact events that is supposed to happen, that everybody is destined to follow. And I have little, I don't know, I don't really like that, because I don't know if I want, my life in particular to be on a set path, that everything is predetermined, because that kind of sucks. That makes every decision you make seem like it doesn't matter in a slight way, or maybe that every decision that you make does matter because you want to follow a proper thing. You want to do the right thing in every choice that you make to make sure that you're on a correct path. Those are my thoughts on Loki so far. I know I probably didn't cover not even like a quarter of everything that happened in this episode. It was visually gorgeous, especially at the end when you get to see this variant Loki doing whatever he's doing. And a lot of the seeds have been planted for the future of this show and for the future of the MCU. This was a fantastic episode. This is already becoming, I think this is my favorite first episode of the show so far. If this show keeps up at this rate of just blowing my mind, I think this will be my favorite show of the MCU shows so far. So thanks guys for watching this video. Comment down below what your thoughts and theories are about this episode. I'm sure you guys have a lot of thoughts on that as well. So thanks guys very much for choosing my video to watch amongst the probably hundreds and thousands of videos that are going to be uploaded within 3 a.m. in the morning. So thanks guys for watching this video. Subscribe if you want to see of these weekly 1 a.m. videos or 3 a.m. videos, because I will of course be doing it every single week for this show. I cannot wait to talk about the next episode and everything following, as well as movie reviews that I will be doing scattered throughout. I will be watching In the Heights tomorrow night as well, so I will have a review up for that very, very soon. So thanks guys for watching, and I hope to see you all in my next one.